and ethyl alcohol in case of plants generally appears. Among this, what is glycolysis? Okay. So, glycolysis is a complex process. The term glycolysis, glyco, which is a Greek word which means glucose, lysis, which means breakdown of glucose or sugar. So, glucose is nothing but a kind of sugar, right? Okay, or splitting. The scheme of glycolysis was given by three major scientists: Gustav, Embden, great scientists Embden, and Otto Meyerhof. Okay, Hof, and J. Parnas, and is often to referred as in a shortcut upon the scientist first name EMP pathway, Embden, Meyerhof, Parnas pathway. If you take the glycolysis is a complex process occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. Okay, and it is present in almost all living organisms, including plants and animals. Okay, in the process of glucose, glucose undergoes for partial oxidation. Oxidation is nothing but addition of oxygen to form two molecules of pyruvic acid, and in plants this glucose, whatever it is there, it is derived from the sucrose. Which is the end product of photosynthesis or from the storage. Finally, carbohydrates, especially such as like sucrose, is converted into glucose plus fructose by the enzyme called invertage. What is that enzyme called? Invertage. So, sucrose is a complex structure made up of two sugar molecules, glucose plus fructose. Hence, sugar is the best example for disaccharide. What is that? Disaccharide. Okay, and this disaccharide sucrose made up of two monosaccharides, glucose and next one is fructose, and these two monosaccharides readily enters the glycolytic pathway. What is that? Glycolytic pathway. And glucose and fructose, if you carefully observe them, okay, phosphorylated to gives rise to glucose 6-phosphate. What is that? Glucose 6-phosphate by the activity of the enzyme called hexokinase. What is that? Hexokinase. This enzyme plays an important role here. So you can see the complete pathway of glycolysis in the diagram. Okay, glycolysis, breakdown of glucose. Now you can see here ATP is being utilized. Glucose being a 6-carbon compound which will be break down into glucose 6-phosphate, and here little amount of energy is utilized. And glucose 6-phosphate, whatever the glucose 6-phosphate is formed, the glucose 6-phosphate which will be break down into fructose, okay, 1,6-bisphosphate. Here also ATP energy is utilized for this process. Okay, and finally fructose 1,6-bisphosphate which will be break down into, okay, triose sugar, okay, or triose phosphate, triose sugar or triose phosphate. Okay, what is a triose phosphate or triose sugar here? Glyceraldehyde. What is that? glyceraldehyde, okay, glyceraldehyde or phosphoglyceric acid. What was that? Glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. This glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, okay, and it will undergoes for a reverse reaction, okay, and produces triose phosphate or dihydroxyacetone phosphate. What is that? Dihydroxyacetone phosphate will be formed. It is a reversible reaction. Finally, after this compound, the triose phosphate, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, okay, here NAD plus nicotinamide. What is the full form of NAD? Nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide, which will be converted into NADH plus H plus. Okay. Now here NAD plus, it acts as a reducing power agent. Okay. This one leads to formation of NADH2, which is a reducing power agent. Nicotinamide adenosine, okay, dehydroxy, okay, substance, which is act as a reducing power agent, helps in the reduction reactions. Finally, here whatever the compound, triose phosphate glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, which will be converted into, okay, triose bisphosphate. What is the triose bisphosphate? Best example for triose bisphosphate is 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. What is that? 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. Okay. This 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid, which will be converted into, okay, 2-triose phosphate, 3-phosphoglyceric acid. What is that? 3-phosphoglyceric acid. Here, wonderful thing is ADP, which will be converted into ATP, which means a synthesis of ATP occurs here. ADP binds with one additional phosphate molecule and produces, okay, an ATP molecule here in this reaction. 3-phosphoglyceric acid finally undergoes for next reaction and produces, okay, 2 molecules of phosphoglycerate. 2 molecules of phosphoglycerate. These two molecules of phosphoglycerate, okay, here what they will do? They will be converted into 2-phosphoenol pyruvate. 2-phospho converted into enol pyruvate. 2-phosphoenol pyruvate. They will be converted into 2-phosphoenol pyruvate. Here also ADP undergoes binding with phosphate molecule and produces ATP. And finally 2 molecules of pyruvic acid will be produced and end of a reaction. Okay. Like this, basically a glycolysis process. What is that? Glycolysis process commonly occurs. Now, if you take this phosphorylated form of glucose, okay, whatever it is there, then isomerizes, enzymes called isomerizes, helps to produce fructose 6-phosphate. In the initial reaction I have shown you the various steps of glycolysis, whatever there, various steps of glycolysis are depicted in the figure. And in glycolysis, a chain of 10 reactions are occurring, okay, under the control of different enzymes, takes place to produce the pyruvate from glucose. 2 molecules of pyruvates are produced. Here, as you can see here, while studying the steps of glycolysis, please note the steps at which utilization and synthesis of ATP. In case of NADH, plus H plus takes place, which is a reducing power agent. ATP is utilized in two steps. Okay, in the conversion of glucose into glucose 6-phosphate. Second, in the conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Here, the fructose 1,6-bisphosphate is split into dihydroxy acetone phosphate and 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde. I have shown you in the reaction itself. We find that there is one step, NADH plus H plus is formed from NAD, nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide. This is when 3-phosphoglyceraldehyde is converted into 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate. Two redox equivalents are removed, okay, in the form of two hydrogen atoms, and from PgAl and transferred to a molecule of NAD. Okay, PgAl is oxidized and with inorganic phosphate converted into BPGA. Okay, as you know very well, the conversion of BPGA. Okay, how it occurs? The conversion of BPGA to 3-phosphoglyceric acid. What is that? 3-phosphoglyceric acid is also an energy yielding process. This energy is trapped to form the ATP. I have shown you in the reaction itself. Okay. Finally, there are three major ways in which cells handles pyruvic acid to produce glycolysis. These are lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation, and finally aerobic fermentation. What are they? Aerobic fermentation. Fermentation takes place under the environmental conditions of CO2 and anaerobic respiration. In the absence of oxygen and other kind of useful things, in the presence of CO2, water. However, these organisms adopt a Krebs cycle, another cycle called Krebs cycle, to which this is also called as aerobic, respiration. This requires O2 supply. What it is required? O2 supply. Okay. So this is about glycolysis. The remaining part of glycolysis we will learn in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe and share my videos. As you do know that with a kind attention I am giving you every point and necessary for the NEET exams and all kind of competitive exams like EAP set, MSET and NEET exams. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Please do subscribe and share my videos. Give your valuable feedback and